Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today is the day 50 for our Palo Alto Firewall training. So we are going to understand how exactly a user ID works with Palo Alto Firewall. So in this video, we are going to understand what is user ID, what are the components that is required for user ID, how exactly it works. We are going to understand the flow of the traffic as well, how we are going to configure Windows Server as well as Palo Alto Firewall for user ID. Basically, Windows part will be done by the server administrator, but if you are not having, or if you don't have visibility, or you need to instruct the server admin, you can just check this video out and you will be able to help them. Okay, and also we are going to see the troubleshooting with user ID. So I'll be telling you what are the verification commands which is available and how you can troubleshoot anything if the verification, if you see if it is not expecting, or if it is not working as expected, in that what are the troubleshooting that you can follow. Okay, so I'll request you to please watch this video till the end so that you can understand user ID as well as how you are going to configure it, and if you are troubleshooting, what are the steps that you have to follow. So it's a complete video for your user ID. So if you watch till the end, you will get all the understanding about user ID. Okay, and also I'll request you to please subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss a video from me. So without any further delay, let's get started. So friends, first of all, we'll understand what exactly a user ID is. Okay, so user ID, if you try to understand the meaning of user ID, user identification, right? So user identification, which is done by Palo Alto Firewall. What is the reason? Now we understand what is user ID. It is a user identification, the way the firewall understands the user. Now what is the advantage that we are going to get when we enable user ID? Okay, so for an example, if you try to understand this scenario, okay, now there are few PCs which is available in floors, and we have divided the floors on some kind of VLANs, right? Now let's say if we are giving access based on VLANs, okay, now VLANs will be propagated to the switch, and after that it goes to firewall. Okay, now on the firewall we might give access based on IP addresses. Okay, now if we give IP addresses, like accesses will be given on IP address basis. Okay, so let's say this is 10.1.1.0/24, this is 2.0/24, and this is 3.0/24. Now when we are giving accesses based on IP addresses, okay, now on this VLAN, let's say Facebook is allowed, and on this VLAN, let's say Gmail is allowed, and in this VLAN, let's say YouTube is allowed. Okay, let's say if second floor guys wanted to access youtube.com, they can come to the third floor and they will be getting the DHCP from this floor, and they'll be getting the same range of IP address, and then they will be able to access youtube.com. Now where we are restricting it, we are restricting based on the IP address, which is not a good idea. This user should not access youtube.com, but he came to that third floor and he is able to access it. Same applies for this user, or same applies for this user. Now IP address, based on IP address, I guess the fulfillment of restricting the access based on users, it is not fulfilling. So how can we fulfill this requirement? With the help of user ID. Okay, now we are going to identify the users. Okay, if the user is moving from one floor to another floor, or maybe moving back to same floor to another floor, something like that, or maybe if he is sitting in home, in that case as well, I need to identify the user. Okay, so with the help of user ID, we will be providing a proper access to him, whether he should not able to access youtube.com, whether he sits in the office building, whether he sits in the branch, whether he sits in the headquarter, or whether he sits in office. Okay, so when from wherever he comes, he should be identifies as the user, and we should provide access based on whatever we have configured in the firewall. Okay, so user will be moving around, but still the access remains the same, right? This will be helpful in managing, right? As well as we are not going to limit the access based on the IP address, it will be based on the user, right? So we'll understand what are the component which is involved in user ID, okay, and we'll understand step by step why those components are required basically. Okay, so friends, to work user ID, there are few components which is very much required. Okay, now first of all, we have a firewall which is Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, now in Palo Alto Firewall we have something called as user ID agent. So whenever you turn on user ID in firewall, there is a agent which will get activated inside the Palo Alto Firewall, which is very much required. Okay, and also we have something called as user based user ID agent at server end, where you are locating your user database. So if I'm giving you a Windows AD example, so in Windows you have to have some kind of username or agent, right? So agent will give information to firewall. Now how the flow will be working, we'll discuss about that. But there will be an agent at server end and there will be an agent at the firewall end, okay, to get information about the user. Okay, now we'll understand how exactly the flow works. Okay, so friends, now we'll understand how exactly it works and we'll be going through the flow of the traffic. Okay, now let's say you went to office, or this user went to office and he logs into the machine. Now all his logs will be traveling and it goes to domain controller. Why the traffic will flow to domain controller? Because all the organization PCs will be connected to domain controller, or they are the part of it. Why? Because if you are working in any of the organization, your PC will be controlled by domain controller. Why? Because if you try to change your wallpaper, or if you try to uninstall any application or a software, you cannot do until unless you have a admin rights. Okay, now why admin rights is not there with you? Because it is controlled by domain controller. Okay, or you can say as LDAP, if you have heard about that, LDAP, right? LDAP. Or maybe you might have heard about servers. Okay, the user database servers. Okay, now right now I'm talking about Windows domain controller. There are other vendors, they have their own user database. Linux is having, and other vendors also are having it. Okay, but widely used will be Windows domain controller. Okay, now whenever the user logs into the office, okay, that particular information will go to domain controller. Okay, now domain controller will record or basically take that session as a login. Okay, basically login logs will be there in the domain controller. Okay, now I was talking about the Windows agent. Now there are two ways. One is agent. A software will get installed in the Windows, and the second was is agentless. where you have to create a user into domain controller and you have to give some privileges to read these logs, right? So what in this video what we are going to do is we will be following the agentless. So we will be creating a username. Okay, so user will be there and he reads this logs. So user logs in, that information goes to domain controller and it generates a log event. Now this user agent will read this log, okay, and he gives this information to firewall. Okay, what information he will be giving it? Now user logs in, he gives its username, okay, and the group, what group he is part of. Basically, whenever we create any rules in Palo Alto Firewall for user ID, it will be based on group, not on based of users. Okay, so that username and the group name will be sent from this user as well as the IP address. Okay, now these three information, majorly it has more information, but I'm talking about these three information. Okay, this information goes to domain controller. Now there will be a user agent or a username which we have given a privilege. He will read these logs and he takes the logs and he sends that particular logs to the firewall. Now firewall will have username, the group and the IP address, and he will record in his table. Now this user will try to go to internet or any other zones or any other servers inside the organization or outside the organization, or going to the branch or headquarter or whatever it is. Okay, now once this user enters into the firewall, he will have IP address, right, the source IP address. Now with the help of source IP address, he will look at this table and he'll find out what is the IP address related to which user. Okay, now he'll be looking at the rules. Now by looking at the rules, he will say, okay, that particular user can go to that particular zone, whether it can go to internet, whether he can go to the Facebook or what that application is. Okay, so all these things will be allowed or denied. Okay, so the first step is user logs in. Okay, the second is that information like username, group and the IP address will goes to domain controller. After that, we have a user agent which is there in domain controller. He reads the logs and he sends the log to firewall, right? Fourth, the domain the agent will keep that particular logs in the firewall and he creates a table. So he creates a table. Okay, so the agent which is there in the firewall. Okay, now when the user hits the firewall, he checks that particular table and checks the policy and allows or denies the connection. So these are the 5 steps which will be the flow for user ID. Okay, so during the practical as well, I'll explain you how the flow is again. Okay, so now friends, we are going to configure Windows Server as well as Palo Alto Firewall for user ID, and also we'll go and understand how to troubleshoot user ID. So let's hit the lab and we'll start configuring it. So before we go and configure, let's understand the topology. Okay, so from the Palo Alto Firewall perspective, this will be the inside, this will be the outside. Okay, it is connected to internet, and this is connected to our LAN where our PC will be there. Okay, so we will be configuring username, different usernames, and will allow or basically give access based on the username. Okay, we have a Win server over here, and the traffic will be flowing through, and the user ID will be working through the switch. So let's start configuring Palo Alto. So I have already done the IP address configuration. So I have already configured the IP addresses to all the devices. Okay, and also I have made this Windows server into a domain controller. Okay, so if you want to see how to convert a Windows server to a domain controller, maybe there are a lot of videos which is there in the YouTube. You can go and watch that. Okay, now after that I'll be creating a username, how to give privileges, all those things I'll be covering it. Okay, and even the IP addressing on Palo Alto Firewall is already been completed, and this will be the management interface from where we are going to manage the Palo Alto Firewall, which is nothing but our local PC. Okay, so let's go to Palo Alto dashboard. Before that, we'll go and configure the Windows server, and then we'll move into Palo Alto. Okay, friends, first of all, what we have to do is we have to log in the Windows server, and we have to create that particular username, because we are going with user agentless. So we have to create a username, and basically with the higher privileges, right, so that he can read the logs. So Palo Alto, we'll just name it as Palo Alto. Fine. Next, will not change the password, and password never expires. Okay, so we have to okay, so let's put the password here, or let me put it again. Next, finish. So we have quickly created the username. Now we have to give permission to him. So we have to add him into the few members. So to read that particular, we have to give him a access for log reader. Okay, and we have to give some kind of distribution communication, com users, and also server operator. So these things are very much important, but at the same time I will also encourage you to add in the administrator as well. Okay, so this is the recommendation from Palo Alto. Okay, and if it is not working, you add a administrator as well. Okay, nothing will happen, but it's better to have them added. Okay, so now we'll close this one, and we have to go to basically vmigmt.msc, right? Now why we are going here is because we have to give him few extra permissions, right? So basically for that, we have to go to properties. Okay, we have to go to securities, and we have to go to MV2 security, and we have to add that particular username over here. So Palo Alto. Okay, and we have to give him some. So for Palo Alto user, we have to give some extra accesses, basically remote enable, read security. I guess we don't need any other things, and this is the 4 thing that we need, and we have to apply it, and we'll click OK. and from the server's perspective we are basically done. Okay, now we'll move on to Palo Alto dashboard and we'll start configuring Palo Alto. Okay, some of the accesses. So friends, this is the dashboard of Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, now we'll go to the device. Okay, now the first thing that we are going to do is changing the service route. Why service route is changing? Because all the traffic will be flowing through management interface. We have to move it to other interfaces so that the traffic should be reachable, right? So for that reason, let's move the LDAP traffic to interface 1 because it is in LAN, right? LDAP should be reachable from the LAN. Okay, and also there are few other things as well, like the user ID. It has to be followed from that particular interface, and you have something called as Corborus as well. LDAP we have already given, the DNS as well. Okay, it's not mandatory, but I'm just moving to all these things. Okay, and I guess we are done. We don't need other things to be. Now we have to go and configure LDAP. Okay, so first we have to configure the service route, then we have to go to LDAP and we have to configure the LDAP. So let's put Windows AD, right? We'll just name it as AD and we'll give it IP address which is 10.1.1.50, right, on port number 389. Now what kind of directory it is? Active Directory. Now base DN and bind DN, there are little bit different, which I need to explain it now to you guys. Okay, so we'll go to the server. Okay, and we will go to the Active Directory. If you see over here, it's a lab.com, right? If you go to properties, or you can just see by lab.com. Okay, so here we have to write it as domain controller is equal to lab, comma, or you can write it as small letter as well. So small letter, will write it as small letter. So lab, okay, and comma DC domain controller is equal to com. So if you have abc.com, DC abc, comma DC com, or this information will be provided by the server administrator, and it's very easy. Okay, now here you have to type Palo Alto @lab.com. Now from where I have got this, you can go here to the user, and if you go to properties, you have to go and check the account Palo Alto @lab.com. So this is what I'm writing over here. So here you have to write the username and here you have to write the password, right? Okay, we don't require any SSL and TLS. We are not providing any security right now for the communication, and we are basically done. Now we'll go to user identification. Okay, and we'll configure some of the parameters over here. Say, so Palo Alto, and the domain name is lab.com, and the password that I'm going to give is the same password. Okay, and also I guess we have to provide .com as well. Okay, or I think it is not required. If it is not required, we'll delete it later. Okay, and this is just a server monitoring, so because we have to keep monitoring whether user has logged in or not. So every time the user agent from Palo Alto will try to check, will go to the server and checks every time. Okay. And also it does the client probing as well, whether the client has changed the IP address or not. So if you are enabling the probing, when you are specifying the time, after every 20 minutes it will go and check whether the user has changed his IP address or anything else. Okay. Now cache is there in the cache, basically that table, that user mapping table. It will be for 45 minutes. Okay, if you want to increase, you can increase it. Okay, or you can disable the timeout as well. Okay. Now there are syslog filters. Basically, as it's understands the user from Windows Server, it also can understand the user from other devices as well. Okay, so Citrix, Juniper, Cisco ASA. Just that we have to get some kind of syslog messages from this devices, and for different devices we have a different requirement. Basically, it understands the syslog messages. You see the syslog messages and allows the user accordingly. Okay. So if you want to enable for, let's say, Cisco ASA, you can basically add it. Okay, and then if somebody is logging from user Cisco AnyConnect, the user, whenever the logs will be trigger the Palo Alto Firewall, Palo Alto Firewall will understand. He retrieves the username information from the syslog and basically keeps the record of it. Okay, the same thing how it is doing for Windows AD, right? And here, if you have some kind of user which needs to be ignored, you can add it over here as well. Okay. So we are done configuring the user ID agent, and now for server monitoring, like every time we need to monitor the server, right? So this is AD server, and we have to specify the IP address, which is .50. Okay. Now we have to define the type. We are using Active Directory. There are other vendors which is there basically. And we will be using VMI protocol. If you remember, we have gone to that particular VMI, right? So this is how it is. Now we'll do a commit. So once we do the commit, we'll see the status as connected. Okay, so let's wait for some time. And once the commit happens, if your device, if your server is reachable, basically what I'm trying to say is, if your server is reachable from Palo Alto, it will show as connected basically. Okay, so it says, okay, the domain name that I have given is wrong. Basically, we have to give a domain name, something like this. So lab Palo Alto. I guess this will work. So Palo Alto. Okay. Now we are good basically. Now we'll commit it and we'll see how it is, whether it's showing as connected or not. Okay. So I'm just stopping for a video for a while so that the commit process happens, and then we'll start the video again. So friends, the commit has been completed and it's showing as connected. Okay, so whatever information that we have entered, it is correct. Now we'll go to Windows Server again, and we have to create some users, right? So let's say we'll create a group basically. So let me create a group, new, and a group. Okay, so I'll just name it as HR, and I create a new group which is known as IT. Okay, now I'll be creating the users. So I'll be creating test, not the smaller one, test. Okay, and I'll just put it as test. Next, and I'll just put the username password here. Okay, so finish this. Now we'll go to the properties, member of, adding, he will be part of IT. Okay, and I'll create another user. This is test1. Okay, test1. Next, and also I'll be creating the password for him. Okay, so we are done. Now he will be part of HR basically. So add HR. So now test becomes the IT group username and test1 is a part of HR. Okay, so let's close this and we'll go to the Palo Alto again. Okay, now here the connection security is different and the terminal user where you want to terminate with the help of Sectrix, the agent and all, but we are not interested into all this. We are going to add the mapping over here. Now why mapping is required is because we have to basically import those groups into Palo Alto, then only we can create policies based on that. So here AD, we can give any name, but I'm just giving a relevant name, AD group. Okay, and we have to add that particularly. Okay, so here if you go to user, okay, I'll be adding HR as well as I'm going to add the IT. Okay, so these two groups we have called. Now we'll be creating based on these groups. Whatever groups that you are adding over here, only that group will be called under policy. Okay, so we'll create that particular group and we'll go to the policy. So we'll create a security policy. Now first policy that we are going to create it for our Windows server. Okay, I'll tell you why we are creating it for. So Windows server. Okay, and we'll put it as inside zone, add it as 10.1.50. Okay, and destination will be any, basically adding the zone as outside, application any, everything is allowed basically. Okay, now we'll be creating a group. So this is for HR. Okay, now source is inside. Now user ID will be, okay, now I am, so why the user groups are not visible? Because we have not committed it. So we have to commit it first and then we have to create the policy accordingly. So let's commit happens and then we'll start the video. I guess it is going to complete in some time. So let's wait for 10 seconds. So the configuration commit has been successfully done. Now we'll add a user policy for HR. Okay, so adding inside and adding the user. Now we will be getting the user with lab HR and destination will be any. For HR we will be giving only access to the ping. Okay, so we'll just allow ping. So application, in application let's find ping. Okay, so we are only allowing ping and we'll make it as any and action is allowed basically. Okay, so for HR they are only able to ping, and for IT we will be adding as a source as inside and user as IT, destination will be outside, and application is any and everything will be accessible for IT users. Okay, so let's commit this. Okay, and now we'll go to the test users and we'll do testing from them. So let's commit and then we'll start it off by testing it. So now this machine should be added into the domain controller. So for that, what we are going to do is we will go to the control panel. Okay, and we will go to the systems. Where is the system, and we have to change the settings, changing here, and we'll type it as lab.com. Okay, now why it is not happening? Because we have to change our IP address basically. Okay, so what changes that we have to do? We have to go to network, we have to go to change adapter setting, go to this properties, and we have to change the DNS to 10.1.1.50. okay, okay, close. Now we'll go back to that particular systems, change the setting, and we'll click OK. Now it is asking for the lab/administrator TRATOR, and we have to give password to this. Okay, now it is welcoming us and we have to basically restart the PC. Okay, same we will be doing for this PC as well. Okay, now we'll go to the control panel and we have to go to change the settings of the network. We have to change the DNS basically. So we'll changing to 10. Okay, let's close this and open it again. 10.1.1.50. Okay, okay. Now we'll go to the systems again. Where is the system? And we go to the change domain lab.com. right? Now here we have to type administrator and we have to give password to this. Okay, okay, it says wrong password. We'll try it again. So lab-administrator administrator. Okay, so let's say it says that welcome to domain controller. It is asking to restart it. Now we'll restart. Okay, now we'll open this PC. Okay, now we have to basically log in as lab. So let's make this one as IT. So test, and we have to give password to him. Now we are signing into the lab, right? Okay, so let's do it again. So the trust relationship between, so if it is not happening with you, so what you can do is we can restart it again. So friends, now you can see that test user is logged into the Windows. Okay, so the first thing, both the Windows or both the PC has logged in. Okay, Now let's check the IP address of both the PCs. So let's go and try to search CMD. Okay, and we'll try to check the IP address. So this is 10.20. okay, now for him it has to be 30. So let's open it. It is taking some time. IP config, this is 30, right? Now once we log in into the system, that information will go to Windows Server. Okay, now where we can see this information, will go to Event Viewer. Okay, and in the Event Viewer, if you go to logs, basically event logs, and we have to go to Windows and security logs. Okay, now there are so many logs, and there are so many logs from Palo Alto as well, so we have to find it out. Okay, so let's find it out. Logs with test. Okay, test. Now as you can see the details over here. Okay, and maybe this is not a correct log, we have to find it another logs. So test login, right? If you go here with the test, this is also not that particular information that we are looking for. And test, okay, this is not also. So we have to basically find with the IP address. So let's find with the IP address, because there are so many logs for so many reasons. So .30. Okay, now as you can see, it's a Corberus ticket, and if you go to the details, testlab.com, and there should be an IP address, but IP address is not showing over here. So let's search it again. Login. Now you can see the IP address, you see the test lab. Okay, and if you try to search with .20 as well, login, so this is also got an IP address, and this is for Windows, but it has the IP address is missing, I guess. So still it is not showing because it was not logging in, right? So but okay, so maybe okay, now as you can say test one. Okay, now these information whatever we have logged in, we can see in the Windows. Now if you go and log in into Palo Alto Firewall, so putty will open putty and will log into the firewall. So 192.168.202.130. okay, yes, and we will log in here. Okay, I have to do a duplicate session because admin, and we have to give password to this. Meanwhile, we'll change the settings so that it should be visible for you guys. Okay, now if we go and check that out, so here we have to type user IP mapping, I guess IP user mapping. Okay, all. So now you see this is the Palo Alto, that is, this is required because this is for Palo Alto agent. And as you can see over here 2, okay, 20 and 30. Okay, and this is something else for This is not required right now, and this is for 20 and 30. Now the user, when the this IP addresses comes, he will check, okay, what is the policy for user 1, what is the policy for user, and then he will act accordingly. So let's go and we'll test the connection. So this is HR, right? This is HR group. So if I try to ping a.a.a.a.a.1, so let's say whether it's pinging or not. So ping is not working. Why? Because we have not enabled the interface. So we have to go on the interface and we have to basically enable it. So where we can do that, we have to go to zones, inside zone, and we have to enable the user identification. So we'll commit this, and once the change happen, like once a commit happen, I'll start the video again. I'll stop it for now. So the commit has been successful. Now we'll go and try to check it again. Now we'll see the ping is working. Okay, for HR, what the rule was, if you go to the policy, the second HR, it was only the ping was allowed, right? So ping is happening. We'll try to go to google.com and we'll see whether it's working for us or not. So let's open facebook.com. It is getting closed. Okay, so if we go and check the traffic log for HR, okay, so HR test 1, the ping was allowed. Okay, so let's refresh. We'll see some other logs. Okay, the logs are not basically updated till now. Okay, so this means that it is basically not allowing it. Okay, now let's move on to the IT team. Okay, now for IT team, we are basically good. We are able to access anything, even we are able to ping it. So let's log in now. Okay, let's try to ping anything. So ping 8.8.8.8, sorry, it's 8.8. okay, so let's see whether the ping is happening for him or not. It is happening. Okay, now we'll go and try to access the web. So let's open the Firefox and we'll try to go to google.com. So google.com. Okay, so let's see whether the Google is working for us or not. Oh, it's not working. What might be the issue? There is something which is related to this. So whether the DNS is not working, let's find it out. CMD ping www.google.com, right? So ping is getting resolved over here. Okay, but our ping is not working, so ping is not going over there. Okay, so let's open youtube.com. Now we'll try to check what is happening with the logs. The test, it is allowing it. Okay, TCP reset from client, TCP reset from client. Okay, so there is something which is basically having some issues or something. Let's check the settings of this. Now I'll just check the IP address, what is there. 10.30. okay, DNS, everything looks fine. Okay, and also in the logs it is getting allowed. DNS is also allowed basically. So I will try again over here. Okay, now as you can see, the internet is working in this PC. Like in the IT, if you try to give the IP config, so, and if I try to ping 8.8.8.8, okay, so I'm able to ping as well as I can able to access the web. Okay, now if we go and try to do the same over here, okay, so we'll try to ping 8.8.8.8. we are able to ping, but at the same time if I try to access the web is not accessible, right? So as you can see over here that for HR ping is happening, nothing is happening. For IT everything is happening. Okay, ping as well as the internet. Okay, so this way we will be controlling the user based on the user identification, not on the IP address. This is how the user ID works. Okay, I know this video has went very long, okay, but this is how we have to basically cover the user ID, because it's a very long topic and there are so many other things as well. Okay, so this is what I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any suggestion related to my video, you can write it to me on my email ID, or you can connect me on Facebook, Instagram, or you can send me a message on that particularly. And also I'll request you to please subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss a video from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next.